In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Half a day, everyone. Nestor Licanto here. Welcome to another instance of In Full Zoom. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about employer-employee issues and how the pandemic has impacted that and how we're going to kind of deal with those as we slowly reopen the economy. And joining us today is the SHRM, Society of Human Resources Management, SHRM Chapter President, Daphne Guerrero. She is the HR Director of Citadel Pacific. A couple of their companies, among others, are IT&E and IP&E. We've got the Vice President of Public Relations, Attorney Michael Pangelinan. He is a partner in the Calvo Fisher Law Firm. And we also have member Christy Cruz, who is the HR Director of the Hilton Guam Resort. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Half a day.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Let's just start with the big picture. And let me start with you, Daphne. What are some of the current challenges in recruiting employees?
Oh, we can definitely speak to that. For our companies, we have been having a big challenge, and I don't think we're alone in this, in finding people who want to work right now, especially with the continuation of the PUA benefits that is expected to continue until September. So with that, we have been challenged in finding employees, especially for our frontline positions, because I mean, we are still in the middle of the pandemic. So we have a combination of the PUA funds and also people who are still afraid to be out, you know, in a public facing role. So it has been a definite challenge filling those positions for ourselves.
Yeah, and Christy, one of the hardest hit industries, of course, was tourism. Had probably one of the highest percentages of layoffs. Talk a little bit about the challenges for the tourism industry.
Well, of course, we're still missing our major markets, which is Japan and Korea. They were, you know, a major market for us here at the hotel. But luckily, you know, we've had a lot of local and corporate business that's been sustaining us throughout the pandemic. So I think we've been very fortunate. Definitely one of the more fortunate hotels throughout the pandemic. And so we're hanging in there. We're doing our best, trying to find creative ways and market our products so that we can survive and bring in the local market.
Yeah. And Mike, as an attorney, can you speak to, are there any changes to policies in the workplace as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, Nestor, so, you know, my role with SHRM is not only as the vice president, but I do kind of bring a perspective of someone who's regularly advising a lot of businesses. I mean, I manage a small firm of employees, but I spend a lot of time giving recommendations and guidance to companies in Guam. You know, and the pandemic has resulted in lots of changes, right? All kinds of new laws, actually some new federal relief laws, and local executive orders that are unprecedented, that businesses, you know, they can't really research it and look up sort of how do we deal with this. There's no blueprint for it. You have to do your best and just interpret the regulations as best you can. You know, in terms of, you know, the workplace, I mean, it's always the regulations that pertain to safety. Those are all new, you know, and all things that have never had to be dealt with before. So you have lots of, you know, social distancing rules that have to be put into place. You know, there's regular sanitizing of all the surfaces, and, you know, signage that has to go up everywhere. When you walk into a business, you'll see the signs that need to be there. But in terms of managing the employees, you know, it's just trying to navigate through all of this new situation that we're facing and that we've been facing, and that thankfully we're coming out of, has been a challenge. But the hiring process, you know, is pretty much the same. You know, it's you know, as Daphne and Christy mentioned, it's challenging actually hiring employees right now. But, you know, I think that the technology, you know, there's the interview process, the intake process can be done remotely, you know, to some extent. There's some of that goes on, you know, to kind of keep, you know, to keep focus on safety.
Yeah, and I'll ask all of you guys to weigh in, but one of the issues that has come up is the mask policy when employees are, in this face-to-face situation. Should there be a mandatory mask policy? How do businesses craft that policy of wearing masks at the workplace? Let me start with you, Mike.
Well, recently, and this kind of reminds me of something that happened in May where we had the CDC that recommended or gave some guidance that you don't have to wear a mask when you're outside. And they really kind of loosened the restriction on mask wearing in terms of their federal guidance. But, that wasn't implemented in Guam. And so what we did as an organization, an association to help the HR community, is we put out a reminder that, even though the CDC says you don't need to wear masks outside, the local government has not adopted that. So employers should maintain a mask wearing policy in their workplace. And so that was an important way that Guam kind of doesn't necessarily follow the national standard in all these things. And Guam has done well, better than the national, other places in the US, I think for that reason. But, businesses generally, as far as I know, all the businesses that I advise all still have a mask wearing policy when you're inside a workplace, inside any sort of retail establishment, restaurant. I know the restaurants have their own unique policy where you're not going to be wearing your mask when you're sitting at your table, but there's mask wearing required at every business as far as I know.
Yeah. In Full Zoom will continue in just a moment.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E.
How about you, Daphne? What's your thoughts on the mask policy? Because there are people who have an aversion, I suppose, to the wearing of masks. They believe it's kind of an infringement on their, personal freedoms. What's your thoughts on that?
Definitely. So fortunately, we haven't had much pushback at our businesses. But what we do as a business is we follow the regulations that are put into place by our governor and also by the Guam Public Health. So we make sure that our businesses are aligned with those provisions. We have not lifted our mask wearing policy, especially for our frontline staff. When it comes to our office staff though, so if I'm in an enclosed office, I'm usually mask off. But if someone were to come into my office or, I were to go somewhere else, then I always put my mask on. So we still maintain that. And I think it's also, a comfort level because we've also, I think it ties in also with the vaccination stance that we've taken because we've strongly encouraged all of our employees to get vaccinated. And I will say, like in my office alone, 100% of our team is vaccinated. So that gives us some measure of protection as well, knowing that within our office, we're pretty safe because we're all vaccinated, but we still continue to maintain the mask wearing policies.
And Christy, the visitor industry, obviously a very customer facing in most
Right.
cases at your employment. So how do you deal with that issue?
Well, our team members, like Daphne said, they're pretty compliant. They know that it helps protect them and others. So for the most part, they're okay with it. I think the only challenges that we sometimes get is from our off-island guests, because they say where they came from, it's not required, but we let them know, we follow the local guidelines and the local guidelines still suggest that we wear them for now. So sometimes we have to educate our guests and we do provide them to the guests who didn't bring one. But other than that, the team members are used to it. We've had it in place ever since the beginning of the pandemic. So I don't think it's a problem for us.
Yeah. And how do you counsel employees who, have to, come face to face with tourists who they're not sure what their vaccine or, mask policy is in their home countries? How do you reassure them that they're going to be safe in the workplace?
Well, we're lucky that we're guided by, a global brand, and they provided operations manuals for us that help guide us in our training. So they received a ton of training. We have a program in place specifically for the cleanliness and guest safety. It's called Clean Stay. So we have all these guidelines in place to help our staff and know that they're safe. We teach them the right protocol. We have plexiglass guards. We also provide the face shields, the face masks, everything that we can do for the staff, we do.
Yeah,
to keep
I
them
wanted
safe.
sure. I wanted to get back into the, this once PUA, as you mentioned, Daphne, expires come September. I imagine we're going to have a lot of people that are still out of work. So how, as an organization, does SHRM view that, and what are the things that you can do to help businesses and employees trying to get back into the workplace?
So with what support we provide to our members is we have been disseminating a lot of help wanted advertisements. So a lot of our members will reach out to us, organizations such as GHRA will reach out and say, hey, can you share this information with your membership? Because there are companies that are looking for employees at this time. And I've seen that, especially during the last few months. We have personally attended several hiring events. So employers are out there looking. So I think the jobs are going to be there for anybody who needs one. Our companies, for example, we are actively seeking full-time employees for our front-facing positions, especially at our foodies gas stations, which are also Guam Safe certified. I'm happy to say, just as Christy had mentioned for the hotel. But I think that the jobs are there, and the support that we provide as the SHRM chapter is to share that information with our membership. And we also share it on social media as well. So we found that, that especially during the pandemic, social media has been very, very helpful in disseminating information on positions.
Mike, what are you hearing from the companies that you deal with in terms of any difficulties in recruitment?
They are challenged right now. A lot of the hotels are actually operating at less capacity than they are capable of. I know of some hotels that are not opening some of their restaurant venues only because they don't have enough employees right now, and they're looking forward to having employees return. Kind of when the PUA benefits expire, they're looking forward to bringing them back so that they can get back into operation, which is good to know. I mean, it's good to know that there's enough business now where they would open, more of their venues if they had enough employees. So as Daphne mentioned, that's a sign that there is job availability. So when these employees now don't have any more of the benefits, relief benefits, there are jobs out there that they can return to.
Yeah, and Christy, for the tourism industry in particular, what have you found in terms of employees? Because the ones that maybe were laid off, did they move on to other employment, maybe another industry? And is that part of the difficulty of getting them back?
That's definitely one of the challenges, finding skilled workers, particularly in our engineering department. I think all of our hotels right now are facing the same problem. Actually, I just came from UOG. They're doing a job fair up there for the National Guard. And I was talking to some of the other employers who are hiring up there, and they mentioned the same issue, like AC technicians, all of these kind of skilled workers, refrigeration mechanics. We're all struggling to find, staffing for these particular skill sets. And I think a lot of that is because the construction industry right now, they're also hiring. They've been hiring throughout this whole pandemic. And they also tend to pay a little bit higher than us in the service industry. So that's one challenge that we all face.
We'll be back with more In Full Zoom. Don't go away.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Yeah, and I wanted to get your thoughts on, during the pandemic, the the remote work option kind of surfaced and is growing. Where is that headed, Daphne? Do you think it's going to continue, or employees eager to get back? I mean, there are some jobs, of course, that require you to be at workplace, but there are also jobs that don't. And so where do you think that's headed?
Right, exactly. And I mean, speaking from the stance that we've taken as an organization, for the most part, we are back in the workplace. And personally, I've been back in the office since last year. However, we still recognize we're in the middle of a pandemic. We still have issues with childcare. We still have issues with education, especially those who have younger kids. So as an employer, we have to be very mindful of that and still maintain some level of flexibility with our workers, especially those who can telecommute. And what this pandemic has shown us is it really doesn't matter where you're conducting work from, work still gets done. There was not a decrease in productivity. You know, it never slowed down. Even during the pandemic, we were working from home and we were still getting things done. So I think employers still need to maintain a level of flexibility and be mindful of the circumstances that their workforces or their employees are facing.
Yeah. Mike, you have any thoughts on telework?
Yeah, I think that the silver lining of the COVID situation that we've been in is really that it's increased the ability of people to work remotely. Not only the technology that's developed, but everyone has had to learn how to remote work. We've had prior to the pandemic, if somebody's going to work from home, they would say, well, for the next couple of days I have to work from home. We wouldn't be able to reach them as well. They're not going to necessarily be able to attend meetings. If they're going to sign documents, they would need to, we need to send someone to their house. Now people are so used to working remotely that they can be productive. And I think that what's going to end up happening now is going forward, businesses, it's going to be a lot easier to work remotely. They're going to be a lot more flexible about remote working because it sometimes enables you to be more productive because you can actually work more hours because you're in a place where you can kind of come in and out of work easily and take care of some personal matters, but get right back to it. And so I think that it's probably going to forever change the workplace in that regard. And that we're going to have now, a lot more, remote working is going to be kind of built into the overall workplace structure of most businesses, probably forever.
Yeah, Mike, do companies need to kind of craft new policies surrounding remote work?
I think what's happened is with our firm, we had to adjust our policies and come up with a pandemic policy, right? So there was a time when it was exclusively remote working, and then we would have to have certain times when we would have group meetings. We have to check in at certain times. You have to be available during these hours, and we had to put policies together. Then that kind of got modified because then gradually people returned to work. So we had about half staff for a while, and then we would have people working on schedules. But I think what's ended up happening is that now forever kind of embedded in our policy is the option of remote working. So that, now when you come across a situation where you have a child who's at home, for one reason or another and can't go to school, or you have to take care of a loved one, or you have some other reason why you can't work, you just need to communicate that. And we'll set you up with a structure where, we're at least as long as we know what's going on, we can factor that into the week. And that's now just part of our policy, even though we're back fully operational. I mean, that's now part of the policy. So I think, like I said, it's just sort of a hybrid now that we've incorporated that. And I think most businesses, I would assume, have done the same.
Yeah, and it's so much more easier now with the emergence of stuff like what we're doing right now, Zoom. It makes it so much easier. Christy, I wanted to move on to compensation. Is it an employee market or is it an employer market right now? And if it's an employee, what can you throw at them to entice them to come work for you?
I would say an employee market. So, for us, we just try and highlight some of the benefits that we have that other companies may not have. For example, with our company, you get room discounts worldwide with some of the one of the things we use to entice some staff to work for us. And like I mentioned, engineering was really tough to recruit. We remind them, you're going to be in air conditioning 24/7. You won't be outside. You won't have to deal with the hot sun. So we're trying to entice them that way. It's a comfortable work environment. We have good benefits, and hopefully we provide meals. That's another benefit of working in hospitality. All of your meals are provided whenever you're working. So, whatever we can do to highlight those things to show that, we might not be able to pay you as much as a federal, but we have these other things to kind of offset that.
Yeah, having said that, though, has there been any upward pressure on wages, though?
Yes, and especially we're preparing now for the minimum wage increase in September. So we're constantly looking at our wages. We're constantly doing surveys to see if we're competitive. And we're getting ready to adjust everybody's wages come September 1st. How about you, Daphne? What's it like for your companies?
Definitely the same. I echo what Christy has just shared. It is definitely an employee's market right now. And there's a lot of jobs that are available for those who are looking, because we have, such a gap. So we are also in the process of reviewing our compensation structure, our benefit structure, to make sure that we're aligned with the market, right? Because we want to make sure that we are competitive when it comes to pay and when it comes to benefits. And I think that's very important. But we also have to look internally, right? And I think for most employees, it's am I being paid fairly in comparison to my peers, both within the company and outside of the company. So we have to look at it on all levels.
Mike, you have any thoughts on that?
Our firm is a small group, and we're kind of in a specialty area, so we're not in retail. Our pay scale and pay levels have not really changed, and in fact we have downsized a little bit on our employee staff. Not necessarily, we haven't laid off anyone or any furloughs or anything like that. It's just that the pandemic has changed circumstances for some people and caused them to need to move on to do other things. But we've adapted because of the remote working, and because we've kind of restructured so that we're able to work more efficiently with a smaller group. So I haven't really seen the same kind of issues, in terms of pay scale or impact as maybe Daphne and Christy have.
Still ahead, more In Full Zoom. Please stay with us.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Just wanted to finish this off and just talk about what your thoughts are and expectations are come September, of course, when the federal unemployment assistance phases out, but also as we, I guess, are approaching full reopening of the economy. What's that going to look like? Let me start with you, Daphne.
We're definitely, I think, already hurting for employees, for good employees. So I think that trend is going to continue. We are ramping up, recovering from the pandemic. And although we're still in the middle of it, we've seen the increase in business. And, I have on our companies, it's petroleum and it's telecommunications. Telecommunications has not slowed down. And within the last year, from 2020 to now, we've already doubled the amount of new hires that we've had within the telecommunications company. And we're close to that on the petroleum side too. So the jobs are here. I think now we really need to focus, and I think this has been a problem pre-pandemic, but the skills gap, right? It's finding qualified workers for those more technical roles, right, here on Guam. So we as organizations, we've been focusing on developmental opportunities such as the apprenticeship program and the workshops that GCC, for example, provides. So not only do we have to bring the employees in, we need to find ways to invest in them and develop them so that they develop those skill sets that are needed for our island to progress.
All right. And you, Christy, what are your thoughts? How's this all going to play out?
I think it'll be definitely easier for us to find some of the team members that we need. I understand their situation. A lot of them did have to stay home because of childcare situations and whatnot. But once that ends, they have no choice. They've got to get back to work to support their family. So I think a lot of the pressure that we have and challenges we have recruiting, that'll ease up a little bit in September when the PUA ends.
All right. And how about you, Mike? How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think it's going to be a great change for a positive change for all the businesses in Guam, because there's going to be a lot more availability of employees to bring back to the workplace. One thing I would recommend, and I'm a fairly new board member to SHRM, but just having the perspective as kind of the new guy on the board, I really have gotten to appreciate the value that SHRM has brought to the community. And I think so as things open up in September, businesses now are going to be, it's going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of different, policy changes. They're going to have to adapt and kind of reopen venues that have been shut down for a long time. Joining SHRM is a really good idea for a business. There's so much value. It's a huge network. We're connected to SHRM National, 500 plus chapters around the country. Huge network of 300,000 HR professionals. Imagine that, all connected to each other. So we can definitely support your business, and we have supported businesses over the past year. We've had every month we have events, Zoom events. We give updates on employment law, all the things, Nestor, that you've been asking about today. These are all things that all the businesses regularly are worried about, and they're stressed out about it. And SHRM has been there as an organization to guide them through each one of these things, from vaccination policies to workforce safety policies. And even in May, we even did a session, dealing with sort of the psychological effect that HR professionals have to deal with. Imagine laying off all these people that you've worked with for so many years, and the emotional aspect of it. We even had a session on that. We've had Dr. Guerrero come on to brief about COVID policies and upcoming changes, and we've just been there throughout all this time. So I know this is kind of a plug for our group, but it really does answer kind of your question. A lot of your questions are things that businesses can get information directly and easily if they become a member of SHRM. So we definitely recommend that.
Mike, I see why they made you VP of PR. Very, very nice there. We do have a couple of minutes left. Let me give Daphne and Christy just a real quick opportunity to plug the organization as well.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Daphne.
No, go ahead.
Mine's quick and short. Like to add on to what Mike says, it's a great resource, SHRM. Not just for HR professionals, but for any manager of any organization. There's just so many tools and resources and toolkits that can be used. And for me, we are hiring. So if you are interested in any of our vacancies, log on to hiltonguamresort.com. We have a list of our vacancies there. We also actively recruit on Guam Jobs Online as well as Facebook. So you can use any of those options to apply. Thank you.
All right. And we'll close it out with you, Daph.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So definitely, if you're looking for a job, IP&D Foodie Shell is hiring. Like I said, we are SAFE certified. And we are partnering with the Guam Guard and attending all of their job fairs. So our positions are available on Indeed and also on Facebook. If you're more technically inclined, we do have a number of openings over at IT&D. And also before we end this, the SHRM Guam chapter, we are also looking at reopening our face-to-face sessions starting in August with some workplace investigations and people analytics training. And then our huge conference in October, we're going to actually bring in the SHRM National President, Johnny C. Taylor. So he's going to be here on October 22nd to help kick off our annual conference. So we hope that we see many of our HR professionals there.
Yes, I attended one of Mr. Taylor's speeches. Very, very good speaker. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne Leon Guerrero, Christy Cruz, and Mike Pangelinan of SHRM. I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on In Full Zoom.
Thank you.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.